Are already in a payment plan, you may now qualify for significant relief. Qualifying and enrolling in this program could stop all collections, settle your tax problem, and may even reduce what you owe by up to 99%. Call the hotline at Tax Help USA to see if you qualify by dialing 800-923-0123. If you or your business owe at least $10,000 in back taxes to the IRS or state, you can now get the help that you need during these hard economic times. Call Tax Help USA to get your free tax assessment to see what you qualify for by dialing 800-923-0123. 800-923-0123. That's 800-923-0123.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
The following program, Collaboration Radio, is sponsored by Collaboration, and to the extent applicable, their guests. The views and opinions expressed therein do not necessarily reflect those of NewsWeb Radio Company or its management.
Yes. Saturday. The sun is out in Chicago. That means anything is possible, including snow, of course. Hello, hello. It is March 9th, 2024. And congratulations.
Me?
You, Henry, everybody. We are sharing a present moment and alive.
And alive.
Aren't we? Yes.
Yes. Thank God.
That's the luscious voice of Miranda Gonzalez.
Oh, Anthony, I didn't know you had your radio voice is like a radio voice.
Oh, are we going to have a radio voice moment?
Perhaps. It depends on whether or not we're promoting anything specific. I'm just kidding.
How about art, activism, and social change? Welcome to Collaboration Radio. That was our opening theme music by DJ Lady D. We are here at the intersection, the six-way corner of art, activism, and social change up at 5475 North Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. Thank you for joining us on Collaboration Radio here on WCPT 820 AM. Chicago's Progressive Talk Radio. We're also streaming live on Facebook right now. Hello. Yeah. And at WCPD.com, and you can get us later at Apple Podcast, Spotify. This video will be on YouTube. Hi, YouTube. And everywhere else you get your digital stuff. I'm Anthony Mosley, Collaboration's Artistic Director, and I'm delighted to have a one-on-one studio session with my friend and collaborator and a person that I just think is awesome, Miranda Gonzalez.
Samesies.
Well, and my new neighbor, our new neighbor.
That's right.
Miranda just moved into a new home.
I did.
And she took a break to come over here and surf the digital waves of radio and internet and share a little bit about her story. You want to check in real quick?
Sure. What am I checking in about? Let's see. There's just so much to really talk about.
Well, I'm going to introduce you. And we're going to go into the interview.
Yeah,
but is there anything?
I feel like based off of what I was about to say is the amount of years that we have known each other that I feel like this will end up feeling like no one's watching. And then I'm like going to, review the Facebook Live and be like, oh, wow, I said that, Stay
tuned, folks. That's good radio, let me tell you. Collaboration Radio is sponsored by the Joseph and Bessie Feinberg Foundation and donors and members just like you. Email info@collaboration.org to find out about buying an ad or being a sponsor, or go to collaboration.org to learn more about the company. Today's episode of Collaboration Radio is sponsored by our friends at AV Chicago, Chicago's leading provider of AV production and event management services. If you need the gear and the tech geeks, they can put it together for you. Tell them Collaboration sent you. Also, Ethos Collective. is a purpose-driven destination and event management company that seeks to become a trusted, strategic ally to your business as we create authentic experiences that align with your goals, delight your audience, and generate impactful outcomes. That's ethoseventcollective.com. Collaboration is a 27-year-old nonprofit. Our mission is to build knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action around our most critical social issues. We do that through live theater, film, and now, for 36 weeks, radio. To leverage the power of storytelling and community to cultivate positive change. So we're just kind of like the cave people around the campfire, looking up at the stars and telling stories. We just have more words and more tools, but a lot of the same stories. What's going on at Collaboration? We're auditioning right now for our youth program, The Light.
Yes.
Any youngsters 14 to 18 that want to make money making art for social change, sign up at collaboration.org. We have a big announcement pending that we've been teasing for a while now. It's kind of turning it to be like the Matt Damon joke at the end of Jimmy Kimmel. You know that one?
I don't.
We won't talk about it because neither of those guys deserve any airtime. But we have a big announcement, and it'll be ready to come out one of these days. Miranda might even have an idea of what that is. But what else is going on at Collaboration? Lots. Go to collaboration.org and check it out, or just join us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter sometimes when we have to. LinkedIn, I guess.
Threads.
Sure. What's that?
Threads.
Snapchat. But we're going to dig in here with Miranda. If you want to call in with questions or comments or general praise, you can do that at 773-763-WCPT. That's 773-763-9278. Eventually, I think we might start doing some giveaways. Do people do giveaways, Henry, at all?
Yes.
Here?
Yeah, some shows do.
And people call in and they give it away?
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Well, stay tuned for that. Wait for it. Miranda Gonzalez.
Yes. It was super Midwest. That's all right. That's where we're from. That's where we're from.
I Chicagoized it. Well, my wife's name is Sandra Delgado. Miranda was born and raised in the city of Chicago. She's a writer, director, producer, and currently the producing artistic director at UrbanTheater Company in Humboldt Park. She was a founding ensemble member of Teatro Luna and has devised and developed plays since 2000. Y2K. In 2020, Miranda recorded a TEDx talk, The Fear of Decolonization. Let's talk about that. Her most recent play, Back in the Day, an 80s house music danceicle, had its world premiere at UrbanTheater Company as part of Clata's Destinos Festival. She's currently developing a play that discusses the history of the Underground Railroad to Mexico as part of the Los Angeles Latino Theater Company's Imaginistas cohort. Directing, writing, and script development credits include all kinds of amazing stuff, including Crime Scene, a Chicago anthology with Collaboration back in 2013. Actually, we were probably writing right now.
Yes.
13 years ago. I think the show opened in March or April. We might have been in rehearsals. We'll talk about that. Miranda, she's a recipient of the 3 Arts Award and the International Center for Women Playwrights 50/50 Award. Welcome to Collaboration Radio.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. And I think it's I feel so lucky, just to watch your journey over the years. It's been really lovely. Go, Anthony.
Thank you. And let's. It's been a process of erasing my ignorance as a white man, and learning my lane and how I can best contribute. And the funny thing is, I know I'll look at myself now in 10 years and I'll go, you had a lot of work to do, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing the work. And I count you and a few others as just really generous, open-hearted collaborators that met me where I was at and embraced me fully. And, you know, this might sound ridiculous, but was not, you know, you know how it is, Miranda. When you're an artistic director or a casting director, sometimes people can't forget that you are perceived as a gatekeeper, and there's a certain thing where you can't. For me, I feel like I can't get real with people sometimes because they still are looking at me like a potential job.
Yep.
Or a thing they want to get closer to for their career.
Yep.
And then I'm like, you know, there's just I might be big and hairy, but there's just a overly sensitive Leo here, you know.
You said it.
Do you find that at all, or not so much?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I think, and I speak to it about, you know, I speak about it directly to newer artistic directors like Wendy Mateo very often, about the positionality and how it switches how people see us. And we've been like, everybody started off pretty much as performers, or like, we're gonna do this thing and it's gonna be fun, and then you get to a certain point where all of a sudden you start to ask yourself, is this person being authentic with me? You know, is this person or is this person genuinely doing that? Or are they just listening to me because of the fact that I am an artistic director? Sometimes you see them, sometimes you don't. You know, sometimes folks do a really good job of like hiding it. But yeah, it's man, this is not for the weak. Like, this role is not. I don't know about you, but the amount of mirrors that have been held up to me over the last 15 years is like, I don't think.
What do you mean?
I always tell folks that leadership is not for everyone. And not that I'm saying it cannot be done. What I'm saying is that there's a difference between managing and leading, right? And we are in positions where our stories are aiming to transform or disrupt something. So when it comes to how we show up in spaces, we have to show up in a way that we're ready for people to call us accountable. Yeah. Like, we have to be ready to lean into any form of conflict, or somebody saying you said, and us having integrity. And in the beginning, you know, in my first couple of years, like, I tell people, I'm like, I know there are people out there who dislike me. Like, I know it, you know, and I think that my leadership evolution would have not happened if I didn't make those mistakes. Like, I made mistakes, and I absolutely tried my best to repair them, you know. And just like you're saying, sometimes you're like thinking, man, I apologize. I let them know where I was at that time. I was so ignorant, or I was so young, or whatever the case is. And then you're like thinking it's okay. And then all of a sudden, you know, somebody comes along and is like, oh yeah, I heard blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh, I thought we didn't? Darn. You know, like, yeah. So it's always like a constant mirror and a constant reflection. And people are just reflecting back how you're showing up consistently. Yeah. Yeah.
And the mirror don't lie.
No.
And at the same time, when you look in the mirror, you don't see the same person everybody else sees. Yeah. And you know, Miranda's also a EDIA professional.
Or whatever acronym is in.
Yeah, whatever it is.
JEDI, DI, EDI.
And, well, you know the difference between DEIA and EDIA?
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. It depends in what space you're in.
Yeah.
If you're in the corporate space, you know.
Well, the corporations lean towards DEIA because they are about diversity first, because diversity is good for the bottom line.
Yeah.
Because if you're diverse, then you have more what? Customers, potentially. And if you are about equity, then I guess equity is first. And a corporation would never start with equity because they don't really care about equity if it's not profitable.
And JEDI, do you know JEDI?
No.
Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I think it's funny that you're like, oh, she's a DI. I'm like, I do not even consider myself that.
JEDI is cool because it's just a better. You know, we use our thing we've came up with for our methodology is KEDA. Our work inspires new knowledge, empathy, dialogue, and action. And that really started for us with Crime Scene, a Chicago anthology.
Oh, Anthony, remember Crime Scene?
I kind of do.
Oh, no, I remember. We were in it.
Well, it was going on, right? We were in what? Well, tell everybody about Crime Scene.
Oh, man. Okay, so I'm going to go back. I just remember at that point, I was pregnant with Amadeus, with my son. And I was, you called me up and you're like, hey, the theater I've been doing, I just don't like it anymore. And I'm like, okay. And you're like, and I want to do something that makes a difference. And I don't feel like the theater I've done has made the difference. And I want to write something. I don't know how to do it. I need your help. Are you okay with helping me out? Like, would you be okay? And I was like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's do it. And I just threw myself in. I had no idea even what you were thinking. Like, I remember I just remember being like, I'm going to trust Anthony. I've known Anthony for a long time. Like, let's go. Let's do this. And when we were in the middle of all of that, of the writing, of the devising, of figuring out, who was on with all of the actors, and some actors had never even done devised work. And I just saw you, like literally put your hands on your head a lot of the times and just like, comb back your hair, which I've now learned is like an Anthony trademark when like you're feeling overwhelmed, and you would like, okay. And when I'm like, man, we are in this and we have no idea what's going to come out or if it even was going to work. Like, I remember a lot of those conversations. I feel like the designers at some point, half of them, like, had no faith in us. Like, for real. They were like, whatever. And we were like, I swear it's going to work, So
for those of you that don't know, this show was a landmark production for Collaboration in which we really changed our whole thing and became a devised company wanting to, make work that was important for us as a city and really meant utilize the power of theater to really make us look at ourselves, hold the mirror up to the 400-year genocide that is being currently perpetuated in the streets right now, where there are certain neighborhoods that are world-class, shiny tourist objects, and other ones that have been forgotten for so long that we all just kind of accept it. And so this show was a docudrama about the root cause of not just violence in Chicago, but really of our great injustice and never mind erasure. And it really is an ongoing genocide. And it's happening right here every day.
And what I think is wild is that what I remember very clearly is that it was during a time where we didn't have all the language we had right now. We did not have any of that. It was before 2020. It was before George Floyd. It was before folks were even really being able to encapsulate what it meant. So I feel like because of the fact that we were in the process of introducing new language, a lot of folks were like, what are you talking about? Like, what is this really doing? Is this going to be impactful? And the bravery that you had around it by touring it across the city.
Yeah.
Like, I remember that. I was like, at that point, I think I was like so pregnant that I was like, I can't go on this little tour, even though it's in the city. But I remember thinking, I'm sorry, but that's brave. Like, I don't know if I could with the content that we were covering. Like, we were covering some content that was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
It was heart-wrenching.
Well, and when we ended up doing about 125 shows for more than 25,000 people, including a Dr. King Week performance at Northwestern Law School. We toured multiple times to the amazing Hamilton Park in Englewood, Austin Town Hall, all over. And when we toured the show, we did change it. You know, we focused on her people that heal people.
Yeah.
When we did it in Wicker Park, when we premiered it, it was in your face, and it was meant to wake up what I would call the theater class.
Yes. Yep.
Which is predominantly white and middle class. Because if you don't know, folks, the vaunted Chicago theater industry was built on a foundation of segregation. The 99% of the theater companies in Chicago are in the neighborhoods where the median income is now more than $120,000 per family. Those are the same places that have all the restaurants, bars, pharmacies, trees, grocery stores, fresh food and produce. UrbanTheater Company is not in that community.
Nope.
And has been a staple of Humboldt Park for coming up on 20 years now?
19, yep.
And really an important voice of that community, and a company you should support. Let's come back to that in a second. We talked about Crime Scene. Go Google it if you want more information. There's a lot out there. But it was an important piece. And I'm so grateful that you jumped in and you trusted me, because I hadn't earned it yet. And but I was being, it was a real thing for me. It wasn't fake. And a lot of people have a hard time believing that.
No, I watched you.
Even today,
yeah.
They still I'm like, listen, I don't care. It's not going to stop me. And there's got to be some white people that show up. We have to continue to learn how to step down and be quiet and support from the rear. But so I'm continuing to try to turn to other white people and say, hey, what can you bring to the table? What's happening is not okay. We all know it's not okay. And pick one thing that you care about. Find one place that brings that to life and support them with money, time, or cupcakes. Figure it out. My lane is making theater, and and I have other lanes too. I was just at I did run out to a barbecue on the corner of Central and Lake this morning at the Kingdom Baptist Church, seeing my friend Marcus and Austin. Different Marcus.
Oh,
different Marcus. But so what is the origin story in the superhero canon under Miranda Gonzalez? How did you become who you are today, as far as being a fierce Jedi and artist and artistic leader?
Yeah, I think so. I really look at my journey as more of an anti-oppressive journey. And because the acronyms, people are so great at picking up jargon, and they're so great at then taking it and weaponizing it. So, anti-oppressive practices for me are like where I live. I think it's really interesting, because I hear people use the term for me like, oh, you're a superwoman, and I'm like, no, I fail all the time. I really do. And I think that the reality of it is that for me, my stand is so strong that I just keep going, because I really truly believe in the movement of being a society where we are empathic, and where we are able to have compassion, and we are able to really be human-centric, and we are able to no longer oppress, and I just really believe it. And some folks will be like, because I like to talk to people who are difficult. That's like my thing. My thing is like, there'll be folks who are very much resistors. Like they.
Well, if somebody is a resistor in their car and they're like, oppress, what is she talking about, oppress? Can you break down the word oppress for me, for the audience?
Yeah, so it is a group of people. Usually the equation is that it is race plus discrimination plus history equals oppression. So, you know, through the history, we have had policies that have been in place, and not just in the United States, which is a huge misnomer, all over the world, that have oppressed Black people. They have oppressed Indigenous people through the history. So when I think about oppression in general, and a lot of folks will be like, yeah, race plus discrimination plus, you know, history, whatever. Like, so when, you know, I remember there was a white man once when I was facilitating a session who was like, so then I'm going to be oppressed, you know, and instead of me naysaying it or whatever the case was, I was like, sure, in about 1,000 years. So once you are a marginalized person and there's policies in place that don't allow you to live a free or liberated life, 100% you will be oppressed in 1,000 years, you know? And there was no rebuttal to that. But, you know, when I think about my path and I think about what that's like when you are a Black person, like I am a Black and Latina person. I'm African American and Mexican. And I have to say this because there's so much stuff that's happening. So I have to be very specific about what ethnicity I am as well as what race I am. At the same time, you don't have a choice but to go into this work because discrimination happened for me at a very young age. You know, I knew I was not the same color as other people. I remember the first time I had an encounter with that. We lived on the west side. We lived and there was, at that time, the neighborhood was not predominantly Black or brown. And I remember the neighbor, and he would not let us ride our bikes across his lawn or across the sidewalk in the front. So we would have, you know, the big wheels that we had. And at that time I was 2 or 3. I remember this because he came out and yelled at us. And it was me and my friends who were Puerto Rican. They lived in the building. And I remember the fear that I had. And I was like, he hates us and we didn't even do anything. Like we didn't, and it was ongoing because we didn't move from that place till 84. Oh, wow, I'm dating myself. And so, that sticks out in my mind because I remember my mother coming over and yelling at him. And I remember my best friend's mom coming over and yelling at him. And I remember my mom like looking at me and being like, you will ride your bike because you will. And I was like, okay. But we were so afraid, and we would have to pick up our power wheels and walk across so he couldn't hear, you know, so it sounded like we stopped. And that's early. Like, it's early to realize that you are different. Not because of anything you did, not because of your personality, not because, right, this person doesn't even know you, they don't talk to you, and automatically it's like, you're horrible. You're a horrible person. And consistent things happen like that throughout my life. So when theater found me, because that's usually what I say, because I was trying to be famous, you know, I was like SAG-AFTRA at 15, and I was like, I'm going to be in LA. And then theater ended up finding me. And I was like, this is a lot more, it resonates with something that is so deep within my soul and my person and my, you know, epigenetics. Like, it felt historical and genealogical, and, you know, if that's even a word, because I probably messed it up. But, you know, my point is that I could feel it for the generations. And there was just no way that I could leave it, even though I was very broke. You know, like, and so I ended up, you know, being at an audition, running into one of the co-founders of Teatro Luna, and that person being like, hey, would you join this theater company? It hasn't started yet, so come on over. And I'm like, okay. And we had no idea what we were going to do. We thought we were going to do Shakespeare and just be all women, all Latinas. And that is not what happened. We were journaling and sharing our grievances, really, about just being in the casting world as well. Like, I think I try to tell folks, what I learned when I worked with Resma Menicum, and I worked with Resma for 6 months, like in the workshops that he does, and all of in like very in-depth somatic work, it is in my body. And for white bodies, it is not in their body. So the ability to relate is difficult. A straight-haired person couldn't relate to a curly-haired person. They have no idea the process. They have no idea, right? They have no idea. And so for me, it's like I never had a choice to forget that I was darker than everybody else, ever. Not even in my own family in Mexico. You know, and I remember that's the other part, which is a huge misnomer. A lot of people are thinking about, you know, anti-racism or anti-oppressive work, and they think about it only in the construct of race, and they think about it only in the construct of the United States, and they don't realize that when it comes to the color of your skin, that's everywhere. It does not matter where I go. It didn't matter when I was in Paris. It didn't matter when, it didn't matter. You are black. That's it. You know, and it in Mexico, they warned my mom. They were like, just in case, you know, the kids are not going to want to play with her. She's darker. A lot of people equated that just to like socioeconomic and classism in Mexico, but classism is so tied to the color of your skin there as well. And I remember, I will never forget, you know, Mimi was on the corner and she had the 2-story house in Mexico, in Monterrey, and she would not play with me. She would not, all the way till, and I would go every year till I was 16. And she would let my cousin, she would let the girls across the street, she would let like everybody, and she'd be like, you can't. And I knew that it was because I was dark.
And it's, I think that, thank you for sharing that, because it's really important that people understand that the concept of a hierarchy of the amount of melanin in your skin is ridiculous. It's hard to believe, but then you realize that we're not that civilized. We're look at us as a people. Look what's happening around the world, in our city. The listeners of WCPT know what I'm talking about. They have these conversations all day long. I'm starting to do a little bit of work around gun safety and advocacy and, you know, safe storage of guns. And we have what's going on in Gaza. We have all these new arrivals coming to our city, looking for a new home, not quite being treated right by everybody. A lot of people just don't understand. I mean, you know, the migrants moving into Wilmette, that needs to be a sitcom.
Right?
I mean, that's happening now, right?
Somebody needs to elevate that. Oh, no, I know. They're very loud on Facebook. They're like doing, you know, public announcements about it. Yeah.
But it's ridiculous, this concept. Imagine the dog park, and all the dogs are like, hey, the light-haired dogs are more special. I'm only hanging out with the other light-haired dogs. If it wasn't our life and our history and our lineage and our legacy, it would be like a Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah. Of
a backwards people. And we all need to just get better talking about it, about colorism and about the ridiculousness of it all, but the horrific implications of it all. And as our mayor right now is, you know, reworking the education system of CPS and the TIF structure, those are two huge chess moves. And I just hope that we can all give our mayor a little more patience and understanding while the team tries to change the landscape of the education system, because it's not right that every school should give every child the greatest education that we can provide. And that will clear up a lot of issues in 10 years. And there's no quick way to clean up what has been happening in this city for, I mean, just the last 50 years have been difficult. And we got the charter schools, and we got the great high schools and the not so great high schools. They should all be great. Mm-hmm. And the ones that aren't great, they should be greater than the great ones, because what better investment can we make than showing and actually doing the work of supporting the future of our city? What's happening over at UT?
That's your transition. I'm like,
well, yeah, you got Melissa Dupre coming to the stage. I mean, what did you have something you want to say about that?
No, I'm just saying that was heavy. And I don't want to. There's just so much to say about that, and just when it comes to eradicating inequalities and how much power and positional power we give to those who we think are in charge, or and how it is to just come together as a community and advocate in a way that we need to advocate for the needs that, like, we are actually in control. So there's just empowering people to understand their voice is a whole other thing. But I will move on. We
actually have a caller. We have John from Hammond. He wants to talk about the migrants. Hey, John, welcome to Collaboration Radio.
Hi. I just wanted to make a quick comment about the migrants. Both my parents came here after World War II as immigrants, and they had to have sponsors. Actually, my dad came first in 1950, and then my mother came in 52. And my dad was sponsored by his Army captain. Sorry about that. Because my dad was a displaced person during the war. He was a slave laborer, and so he was a displaced person. And the U.S. Army started looking for volunteers in 1946, and my dad joined the U.S. Army. Long story short, his commander said, "Hey, Stanley, do you want to come to Chicago? Because he's of Polish descent." And my dad says, "Well, everything else is destroyed anyway." Bottom line is, he got a sponsor, which was his commander, and my dad came here. Anyway, he came through Ellis Island, and then so did my mother. And they had to go through processing. They had to be documented, and so on and so forth. So I guess my point being is, how is it that here in 2024, you come across the border, you say you're seeking asylum, and there's no processing. There's no documentation. There's no basic, they had doctors. They would examine you if you were carrying, typhoid or some kind of disease. You would be isolated. They had a system. There's none of that, and it's just, to me, it's like we've gone so backwards. I don't mind people coming to the United States, but there has to be some order to it. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, we need to invest. Follow the money, right? If you really want to see what people care about, see where they're putting their money. Why are we not prioritizing the whole process of migrants, from the border to where they end up, right? It shouldn't be just decided by the Texas governor where he wants to bus people to. And if Texas needs help, we're supposed to, that's the whole United States concept here. But thank you for that call, John. I appreciate that context.
Yeah, it's always very interesting, because I think the nuances of what it means to migrate to this country depends on where we're at within the policymaking of the country. The United States has never been a fool when it comes to what particular migrants they're ready to intake, not intake, accept, not accept. How hard is it to get a visa? How hard is it not? Are they reallocating funds? Are they not? And a lot of, when I think about the cycles that we go through, at the end of the day, I should not say that phrase, but what I have learned is all of it depends on the GDP. what are we importing? What are we exporting? What labors do we have? What shortages do we have? What is going? And I feel that when it comes to this particular crisis, a lot of what is happening is because of the systematic things that we have set up on purpose for certain folks to be okay and certain folks not, and then recognizing and where we are in the divide. Because folks are saying, oh, we've never been this divided. That is not true. We have absolutely been this divided, historically, right? And now how it is showing up for me is something that is like, wow, everything is connected. Resources are connected, all of it. And everybody deserves to seek asylum and to seek safety and to have people who are understanding what that means. And at the same time, folks are thinking everything is siloed. Like, oh, just the conversations I've heard that are like, this is absurd. You are literally saying that we are not able to house people here when there are so many buildings that are vacant. You're saying, so you didn't see this coming? No, absolutely not. You saw this coming. You saw this coming. And that's how I get upset about it or passionate about it, because I think, the three of us, the four of us that are, in this room, and John, you on the call, we are thinking about these things. We're like saying, everybody should like we should be allowing people to seek safety. Everybody deserves that. That's a human right. Like, everyone deserves that. And yet, there are folks who are so myopic that they only look at one thing and they don't look at the cascade of it. So it's, it's really interesting. And during the 1950s, when my grandparents came over, there were policies in place that were not allowed. It was very clear that the Europeans were able to come to this country and people from Mexico and South were not. So it was... the policies were not very nice. So I am wondering, what will this look like to people in the future? Like, what will be revealed?
Oh, yeah. We have Mirna from Chicago who wants to also join the conversation. Hello, Mirna. Welcome to Collaboration Radio on WCPT.
Hi there. Thank you. I'm sorry, what's your guest's name, please?
Miranda Gonzalez.
Miranda, my fellow Coda Montana. Nice to meet you on the phone.
Hi.
I know what you mean about the discrimination of the being in Monterrey and your neighbor look down on you because you're different in skin color. It happens in families, and it happens just with neighbors and friends, people in the neighborhood. But my comment in particular is to John. There's a big misconception about what took place at Ellis Island.
Mm-hmm.
His grandparents or ancestors came through it possibly at a time where they finally started checking documents. The initial immigrants who came through Ellis Island, the only documentation that they had was paperwork that gave their name and who their family members were back in Europe. There was a time where Italians were frowned upon. They were considered persona non grata, and that's when they started shutting down their easy entry into the United States. There was never any type of, it's not like now where you were vetted. There was no way to do any vetting because people were coming from all over Europe. So like I said, the only documentation that they presented at Ellis Island was a piece of paper that said, "Hi, my name is Joe Schmo. I'm from Italy, and my parents' names are such and such." The government officials that were there would check. Basically, it was just like by, kind of eyeing them over. And if they thought that person looked ill, then they would send them to a different room. Otherwise, pretty much 90% of the people who came through there with just a paper that said, "My name is Joe Schmo," were allowed into the country without any problems.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what I mean by the policies or what was taking on in place during that time and how easy it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And if John is interested, if he can check a program on PBS called the History Detectives, look for the episode on Ellis Island. and one of the current employees there explains it thoroughly. So it's not something that I just made up or I thought I understood correctly, but it's explained very clearly on that show. So thank you for a great show today.
Miranda, thank you for calling in. Have a great weekend. Okay, now can we talk about Urban Theater Company?
Yes.
Artistic director. What's your vision?
That is yet to be revealed. No. I'm just kidding.
Come to the vision party.
Exactly. Our gala will take place on Urban Theater Company, just for folks who don't know Urban Theater Company, which is something that we run under shared leadership, and we have since I've been on in 2017, myself, Ivan, Vega, and Tony Bruno. And it's interesting because even after 19 years, we'll go to we were at the League of Chicago Theaters gala, and 3 people were like, "Oh, I live in Humboldt Park. How long have you been there? I've never heard of you." We were like, 19 years, you know? So it's just interesting to, even in theater, how people just stay in their bubble. And so we aim, for those folks who don't know, we aim to disrupt the Eurocentric way that people make art. And we are specifically a theater that is a decolonized theater, and we do decolonized practices. A lot of folks will be like, what does that even mean? You know, which is why I have the TED Talk about it. And I usually answer that question with, doing decolonized theater is literally the antithesis of what you would see in a conservatory. The things that conservatories have a lot of actors, a lot of directors, a lot of designers do is oppressive. And it's also erasure in a lot of cases. So the idea of starting at neutral for an actor in a conservatory who is Black or brown is literally erasing every lived experience they had, even when they're sitting there playing a character in Jose Rivera play. You know, and so I don't do that. I'm like, nope, you are who you are, and you have to actually bring a part of that to this. You know, and what are your rituals in order to release yourself of this, and how can we find healing through you knowing what parts of this resonates, this particular story, and knowing what parts of the story that you can convey to other people to transform their lives and our audience's lives. So we really aim to listen to our community, to listen to the local artists that are there. Everything that we do is not in a vacuum. I listen intently to what's going on. When I did Back in the Day, you know, Back in the Day was a huge reason was because of the community. You know, it's because of Jose Echeverria writing a book, The Real Dance Fever, and him coming to a play with Hilda Fontenay, and Hilda Fontenay being like, Miranda, you have to do a story about this. You know, Miranda, you should get together, and this is important. And then recognizing that era in Chicago history, a lot of folks don't know. You know, so how do we elevate and amplify stories that are counter narratives or that are close to erasure for the masses? You know, and I thought it was very interesting as well, right? Because when you do work for the community, a lot of the times, sometimes there's this idea that you know, oh yeah, I'm going to make a lot of money, or there's a lot of money, or you're getting a lot of money. It's like, no, I'm broke. I'm literally doing this because of the mission. And you know what I mean? Like, no, I'm not, I don't make any money. We're actually in the hole, you know, but that's not the point. You know, the point is not revenue, right? We're a decolonized theater. The point is not for us to make money off of this. The point is for us to start a conversation within our community, within history, within everything. So at least it exists. It's archived. So that's what we do in Humboldt Park. You know, we're very, very entrenched there. I grew up in Logan Square in the 80s and grew up in Humboldt Park as well. And I wrote an entire op-ed that Carrie Reed asked me to write for the Reader about the reality of what it means to be a theater that is in your community. You know, we are not community theater. We are professional theater that is in our community, and how our community consistently holds us accountable. And let me tell you, like, Our audiences are very direct. If they don't like something, they don't like something, they don't care. They're going to tell you. I don't like that. That's not how it happened for me. Great. Oh, cool. That's absolutely fine. But that's the beauty of it. It's like, yes, let's talk about it. Yes, let's create a panel. Yes, let's involve folks. Yes, let's talk about what it meant. Like when Not for Sale happened, Wendy Mateo directed Not for Sale 2.0. That was her first directorial debut, and she'd never directed before. And I was like, you can do this. And the way that Not for Sale was specifically based off of a commission that Guadalis del Carmen, who is in New York, who's like, the New York Times top 50 playwrights, and now, but back then it was her very first commission. She was born and raised here, and I called her up, and I've always loved her writing, and I said, Guadalis, I need you to write a story about what just happened to us. We were rehearsing for La Gringa, written by Carmen Rivera, and the next door neighbor was like noon on a Saturday, and the next door neighbor came over, pounded on the wall, not from the area, a white woman, and was like, I'm running a yoga class, and it's like, well, we're running a theater. And she could not stand us. She's no longer there. But I was like, we have to write about this. Like, the majority of the people who we're working with grew up and were raised in this neighborhood. Guadalis, grew up like not even like on Western and Division, like right there in Ukrainian Village, or, on Chicago and Western. And, it's one of those things that's like, right, please do this. And she did. And the way, that was the first show that Urban Theater did that when we ran the numbers, 77% of the audience was white. And that we never, even now, have had a show that way. And it caused such a discourse because folks were yearning to be an ally. And they were like, we just want to know how to do better. And it was not what we were intending at all. It's that moment where you're like, should I write this? Like, did I do the right thing? Was this the right? But it was so in their face. Like, it was like literally telling them a whole monologue about like, we've been here first. Like, this is my Puerto Rican flag. Like, this is why we're here. Like, you're the one who came. And all sorts of them bought Decolonize the Culture shirts, and, because that was a line in the play. And yeah, so that's the kind of work that we do and that we want to continue to do.
Awesome. Let me just take a moment to say, if you don't know, there was a time in this country when Puerto Ricans could not display the Puerto Rican flag.
That's right.
So if you're like, you just graduated from college in Ohio or Indiana, and you move to Chicago, and then all of a sudden, one day, you see an awesome ride with a big flag rolling down the street and horns honking and people celebrating. It's because Puerto Ricans were so oppressed that they were not allowed to celebrate. Now, this is I finally went to Puerto Rico for the first time.
What?
About 2 years ago. It was amazing. Yeah. I loved it. But you know what made me a little sad?
The gentrification?
No, it was that Chicago Puerto Ricans have gone through so much oppression that I could tell they were noticeably different. That they had to have, there's been a harder exterior that folks have had to take it on just to get by, that I didn't feel as much when I was there. Yeah. And that's sad to me, that the Puerto Rican community has been forced to move and relocate multiple times. We have the riot.
Yep, that's our first advice piece. It's called Division, La Division, La Division.
And we show that we built that short scene and crime scene.
Yeah.
Adiacelas Cruz, right down the street. We have 2 minutes left. 2034. What are your hopes for the city, for your family, and for our country, so that if you come back and listen to this in 10 years, you can be like, awesome, it came true?
That is Yeah. I think what's important for me is moving the needle and facing the reality of what it actually takes for us to get there. And if in 2034 we are at a place where our education system is a lot more equitable, where access to education and education that is available and readily available and honest and all encompassing, right? Like shows all of the sides of the story and is inclusive. You know, I really can't wait to watch my children in high school have an education where they come home and they tell me all of the injustices as well as all of the hopes as well as what the solutions are. You know, and not that it's not happening now, because it is, because I have a daughter who's 18, who's in college, you know, and that is one of my major hopes, is for the political officials to see that. And it's for the entire country to understand that if everybody wins, like, right, if marginalized people win, everybody wins. You know, it is not an us against them. It is not that. It is not.
That's the only way we win, is if the people that have less get caught up.
Yeah. You know, people who are minoritized are able to be equitable. And, you know, the other dream is that we start looking at systems that are a lot, not just equitable, that not just create belonging, but that are successful, that are proven track records, so that way we can catch up with some of the other countries in certain areas, not all of the areas, but that would be my hope. You know, I'm really specific about it, so I feel like I have 100, but I'll start there.
Thank you so much for joining us on Collaboration Radio. Miranda Gonzalez, she's on socials. You can go find her. She's not hiding from anybody.
So public.
And next week we have Maida McNeil from Honey Pot Performance on. You see what we're doing here?
I see what
you see what we're doing here? Henry, I mean, you must have learned a little bit over these last 36 shows.
Oh, absolutely. I love to be able to like firsthand witness like all these conversations, all these like dialogues that need to happen. Absolutely.
If you enjoyed what you heard today, become a Collaboration member for as little as $1 a month, and actually put a little money in behind your heart.